we'd like to bat a little better than 300 in our business, but we don't expect to bat 1,000. And we think that if we're not willing to make some mistakes, there's not going to be much chance that we'll find some successes either.
Growing a business is made possible by a grant from Computerland stores across the country. The retail computer specialists that have been helping growing businesses for over 11 years.
The gathering, production, and distribution of food is one of man's oldest businesses. In the past 10 years, it has also been one of the hardest. Family farms have been failing at record rates. This week's show is about a family that did not fail. Lundberg Farms in Richvale, California, has stepped aside from the vicious cycle of low commodity prices and high interest rates by becoming a fully integrated food enterprise. 4 brothers, Homer, Harlan, Wendell, and Eldon, named by their father after Supreme Court justices, created a rice business that controls every aspect of production, from the development of new varieties of seed to cleaning and packaging to even putting it on the supermarket shelves. In 1970, they took the unusual step of growing a small amount of brown rice on their land and selling it through the then emerging natural foods industry. The experiment was successful, and over the last 25 years, through extensive trial and error, they've converted all of their acreage to organic farming techniques. They've developed a variety of rice products, including blends of wild and brown rice, hot and cold cereals, snack foods, and sweeteners. Their products are labeled and sold under their own name in health food stores and supermarkets throughout the country. And they now have a group of other rice farmers who are producing their way and selling under the Lundberg label. 3 generations now run and operate Lundberg family farms. The lesson here for other farmers may be a simple one. Find your own customers, listen to them, and then don't compromise.
It's been said that even with all of our technical advances and even with all of the things that we have discovered here in the last century, our human existence depends on the fact that there's 6 inches of topsoil and the fact that it rains. And I guess when you get right down to basics, that's it. We had a philosophy that we really wanted to be true to as far as stewardship of the soil and stewardship of our production of food, and without even sort of realizing it ourselves, we said, if that's what we want, there must be people out in the marketplace that want the same thing.
We have a very fresh program. We mill it freshly, pack it freshly, and ship it out very quickly to our customers, our distributors. Any questions at this point?
The CO2 or the nitrogen, it doesn't affect the taste at all?
A question that we're asked by a lot of buyers that we see, a lot of customers that we contact, is how is your rice different from another rice I've seen this week? And the major difference, I think, is the quality and the fact that we see it from seedling to shelf. We see it all the way through. And there is an emphasis on quality control because it's personal. It's not just a product we believe in, but it's a product with our name on it. So it's a very personal thing for us.
Most of the names on a package, it's just a name that some company thought up, or but we're real people. When you see the Lundberg rice, we're the farmers, and I just love to be out there meeting the people who had the stores. I just love to let them know that I'm Mrs. Lundberg. We're real people. We're the Lundbergs.
Well, let's kind of go ahead with the meeting then and find out how things are going. Bryce, I was wondering if you could tell us about your last trip into the upper Midwest?
Right. Had a good trip up there to get a better feel for our customers up there. We were in 3 major cities within a week, working with the brokers to get into the stores and let the managers of the stores know that when you're buying rice there's a difference in the rices. There's a difference in how the rice is grown, and that's really the key. And if the buyers of the stores don't know that, it doesn't matter what rice they're buying. And we really need to let them know that when you're buying rice, Lundberg rice hasn't had the straw burned off. We're using organic matter and vetches for nitrogen, and that's really the story that we need to get out there.
We wanted to produce a quality product, and we wanted to identify it as a quality product, and that was the start of it. We never set out a master plan and said someday we want to handle 200,000 hundredweight of rice, and to do that we need this big mill and we need this big packaging operation and we need a sales staff. We just said we will grow as demand dictates. And so really the marketplace drove our growth. We did not try to push growth.
We really did start really small. I can think about just maybe 2 or 3 cases a week, and I think even the industry felt like, well, they're never going to get any place that way.
See anything there except just hulls. That's what you want to see. You'll get a few hulls coming over.
The Lundbergs' concern about the quality of their product and the health of their land is rooted in the memories of Nebraska, where they originally farmed.
I don't know if you've heard about the Nebraska dust storms or not, but I've lived through them. And it just was dry and dry and dry. And I can remember standing in the first dust storm I experienced. I was standing looking out of my window, and I saw something way off, kind of like a round ball. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. Pretty soon I realized, well, that's dust. And I ran and shut all the windows and doors, but it was so fine, you couldn't keep it out.
One of the main things that my dad had in mind when he came from Nebraska was the idea that we're going to leave this ground better than we found it. I think the Dust Bowl had a really strong effect on his thinking. And so he was an ecological farmer before ecological farming became cool. He thought the more organic matter that could be put into this heavy ground, the better. And so by the time we got into farming, we were pretty well indoctrinated with that method of farming.
Look at the size of those heads out there, Gordon. Man, oh man, that is really good looking rice. Just starting to flower here, isn't it?
Even though we were producing our rice differently, come harvest time, we would harvest our rice and load it into our trucks and haul it into the big co-op dryer and dump it into the pit there that all of the other farmers were putting their rice in, and that was commingled, and all of our effort and time and extra concern about our product was lost at that point.
Well, we have really wanted to get away from the commodity sort of thing. The commodity thing, I think, is where you just dump your rice and take what they'll give you for it. And we believe that rice is so important and such a good food that if you do it right and make it a premium quality product, that everybody's going to want it.
We got to thinking, we are producing rice differently. Maybe we want to sell this rice into a market that demands a more natural grown product.
We'll be presenting our 1-pound blends and our rice cakes to Albertson's chain in Oregon, probably at the beginning of next week. I also worked one day with natural food distributor representatives for Oregon, Applegate. It really comes naturally to me to sell it because I know why it's a quality product. I've seen it since I was a little girl, and I know what makes it different. And it's really telling the story of my family. That's what I find sales to be, is telling that story. So it comes very naturally. It's not something that I have to contrive.
Each family is involved, and if they have an idea of a product that they really like, and they say, boy, here's a product I really like. I think we ought to investigate the possibilities of putting this on the market, and it'll be evaluated on the farm right here and in the operation. It's just a gradual from one person's idea through all the families here and then to the market.
Harlan?
Thank you.
Tim? Good. I just love the way this is turning out. It's really light and fluffy.
You know, whenever we come out with a new product, we first have to please ourselves, and we share it over and over again. We'll cook it until we get it just right, or try a slightly different version of it, and until it pleases everyone here, we won't put it out. You don't have to have just plain long grain rice every day. You can have rice as a cereal, rice as a pilaf, rice in a quiche, rice in a pizza. You can have red rices, fragrant rices, short rices, medium rices, stronger flavored rices, subtle flavored rices, almost no tasting rices.
It's important to continually kind of pursue and look for the things that you think you can build on. And I don't think anybody's going to do that for you. I think you have to do it for yourself, research and development, and developing new items. The nursery is just an area for us to see if there's something there that we can develop into a new product. I don't suppose there'll be more than, even like this year, 2 or 3 of the 200 different varieties that I have that we will really want to specialize on, that we'll want to increase, that we'll want to say that it has potential for market. There's just lots of different types of rices that we're working with here, but we're really looking for something that is identifiable. We want to be able to identify it as, when you see it in the market, you'll say, well, this is Lundberg rice, this is a Lundberg product.
One of the things that I think helped us was that we were willing to be patient and let things grow and to grow with it. I know lots of times it was a temptation to be over-enthusiastic, because it's just a nature of when you're doing something you like to do, to want to go too fast. And we had to altogether turn around and do it the other way. Be very patient and take the smallest orders and develop those markets.
I can remember one time Eldon and I went to a natural foods convention down in Anaheim, first one we'd ever gone to, and we took our complete line of products down there. It was a 50-pound bag of brown rice, short grain brown rice. That's all we had to sell at that time, and we were just enthused with the fact that people were really interested in coming and talking to farmers. And all we had here was a 50-pound bag of rice, and they'd run their hands through the rice, and we'd talk about it. And we just really fell in love with the idea of the food producer becoming more acquainted and involved with his customers.
We had a lot of hippies that came by, and then you remember what the hippie movement entailed. It was people who wanted to kind of have a different method of living, and they had long hair, and they're basically living a different lifestyle than we were used to and that we know. But they would come by and were interested in the fact that we could raise rice the way that they were interested in. And so they'd come by with their little broken down trucks and cars, and we would load them up with as much rice as they could get in, the little car or van or whatever they had, and give them some credit. And they'd come back in a few weeks or days and have sold that all out and be ready to order again.
We thought that a more natural method was a better way. I mean, history's on our side. We've been producing food on this planet for thousands and thousands of years. And chemical use in agriculture, to the extent that it's being used today, is a new phenomenon. Started sort of at the time of the Second World War and increased. And so we thought the jury's still not in on chemical farming, so to speak, but how can we improve our farming techniques so that we can be competitive in the marketplace and still improve our soil and improve our product?
When I think of people seeing Lundberg products 20 years from now, what I want them to think about is integrity and the principles that the family has stood by throughout the years, the willingness to take risks, to innovate, and the willingness to do things even against the tide sometimes.
These decisions that our fathers made didn't always seem so popular, but to them it seemed right. They stuck by their principles. And I think that's something that's really important, is that just because everybody else is doing something doesn't make it right.
When they decided to market their own rice 20 years ago or so, you know, that was revolutionary, and the first 10 years were real tough. You know, it wasn't that rewarding. They had a hard time getting rid of selling their rice. But then after a while, it started to pick up. And now, of course, hindsight, that was the best decision they could ever make. A good decision like that always looks bad when you make it, really, because if it was good when you did it, and everybody thought it was good, everybody else would be making that decision. And so it wouldn't be good because everybody would be getting on your market, and there would be no, let's say, growth to your market or no potential profitability. You've got to look ahead 20 years.
When we found out that there was a market, there was a group of consumers who wanted their food produced the way that we were producing it, we realized that we would have to come up with the machinery and the procedures to handle that rice separately, so it wouldn't be lost in this big, huge volume of rice commingled with everyone's rice. So we went around and asked the various mills in California if they would mill and package our rice separately. Well, they asked us, how much rice do you have? We told them, and they just sort of laughed at it. They said, that'd get lost in our machinery. Well, then that meant building our own mill. We had never done that before, but we went and talked to people that were in the mill machinery business, and we said, we want to build a mill, but we're probably wanting to build the smallest mill in California. Not the biggest mill in California, but the smallest mill in California. And the people that we worked with thought, hey, that's a neat idea. We'll do that for you. The main thing we wanted to make sure we didn't do was overbuild and get loaded with debt to the place that we couldn't handle it. So we just built a mill that was large enough to handle the product that we were producing right then, and it was really a small mill. It handled one truckload of rice, one small truckload of rice at a time, and the hulls were put in a wagon rather than a huge bin and hauled away after each milling, and it was not a highly efficient operation at that time, but we did it without spending too much money or loading ourselves with too much debt.
We have different ideas. And we really have operated thinking that is probably one of our strong suits. We all are very, I think, strong individuals, and we all have ideas, but we all recognize that the other person has just as valid an idea or just as good as an idea as you might have. And being four of us has worked together, I think, to our advantage.
Our oldest brother put the fact that the families were going to get along over everything. And there would be, it's not that we agreed on everything. We didn't agree on everything. In fact, I think if anything, we've gone by the idea that if two people agree on everything, one of them isn't thinking. So we really try to look at things a little differently. And then we try to handle those differences in a spirit of love and cooperation. And I think maybe that's what has allowed us to make some progress that haven't been made by other families.
I think that the commitment to one another, too, is a real strength, that we're not just committed to what we produce and what we want to sell, but we're committed to one another, and that comes before the business itself. It's a commitment to people.
I think so. Are you out there? I said somebody should fly to Sausalito tomorrow.
One of the real positives or strengths of being in a farm family is that you get to be with your folks more, and you get to be involved with the things they're doing, where if you weren't involved with farming or another profession, you wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity.
I remember working in the fields with my dad on land leveling projects. Before we land leveled by laser plane, we used to set stakes across the fields and mark them with different colored tapes. And I remember getting up at 4 and going out there just at sunrise and walking the fields until it got too hot at noon. This was in the summer, and the temperatures could get up above 100 really easily. And I remember being involved in that part of it, and that really developed a connection for me with the land itself and what really went into farming. It wasn't just something I heard my dad talk about, but it was something that I could participate in too.
Well, when I first came here, we basically, Lundberg had been selling rice in bulk bags, and they had just started to create some of the smaller products in packages that could be out on the shelf where the consumer could see and read about the farmer and processor, the Lundberg family who was putting these out. I've always felt that this market was a high-quality oriented market. And somehow I had kind of a naive view that no matter how we packaged it, as long as what was inside of it was just really excellent, the best quality, the most organic, that they would buy it.
I think one of the things that we had to do and that taxed our imagination about as much as anything going into this new business of marketing, milling, and growing and selling rice was the design of the package that it was going to go in. Here was something that we had no idea what kind of a bag should this go into. Should it be a 50-pound bag, a 25-pound bag? Should it be red, green? Should it be white? These were problems that took a great deal of study, and we really labored over that for a long time.
We started off with actually a 100-pound burlap bag and just had our names stenciled across the top of a 100-pound burlap bag. We went from a 100-pound bag down to a 50-pound bag, and then down from a 50-pound bag to a 25-pound bag. And finally, we realized that even, except for the people that were eating just lots of rice, a 25-pound bag was still too big. And so we had a 2-pound bag developed, and then that meant buying a form and fill machine, and we bought a form and fill machine to turn the plastic rolls into 2-pound bags with our name on it and our logo and all. And so you finally take the right step and grow into it, but you take small steps rather than big steps.
We want all of our products recognizable at a glance as having come from Lundberg's, but we don't want them all to look exactly the same or generic at all. There's an infinite number of images you can use, but we've selected some that we try to maintain in a consistent way where people can identify with us. And it has to be natural, it has to be country, and it has to be have that honest feeling to it. One of my favorite products ever was Super Mix that we came out with. We thought it was clever. We thought that by calling it the Super Mix and having this really image of a traditional soup cup there, a coffee cup with soup in it, that it would really communicate something basic and natural. But I think people thought it was old. They thought it was out of fashion. They thought it was outdated. The ink didn't come out real good, and we goofed.
I don't think you have to be afraid of making some mistakes so long as you don't bet the whole ranch or the whole business on one option. We'd like to bat a little better than 300 in our business, but we don't expect to bat 1,000, and we think that if we're not willing to make some mistakes, there's not going to be much chance that we'll find some successes either. The people who buy your product need to know that you are doing what you say you are doing. And so we have an open door policy for anybody that handles our rice to drop in on us anytime. We'll give them the cook's tour, show them around what we are doing at that time, and they can feel secure that we are doing what we say we are doing. People come to us and they'll say, well, you're really in solid position, you've really made some progress, and I still feel it, and I felt all along that we were in pretty precarious position most of the time. We never felt like we had all of the answers, and I think maybe that's a real important aspect of growth, is that you don't get too sure of yourself so that you think you have all the answers, and by the time you realize that you don't have all the answers, it's too late.
In 20 years, I would hope that I could be farming with my son, and that the next generation would have the same opportunity that we would have. But I'd also hope that people would say that the Lundbergs haven't wavered in their commitment to providing the highest quality food that they can produce.
Growing a business was made possible by a grant from Computerland stores across the country. The retail computer specialists that have been helping growing businesses for over 11 years.
The Growing a Business book, written by Paul Hawken, is available through this toll-free number. Published by Simon & Schuster, it contains valuable insights and information for anyone running their own business or thinking of starting one. To order, call 1-800-441-3000. The hardbound volume is $16.95 plus handling. And please have your credit card ready when you call.